Coming to you from a caravan in the swamp. It's the Littlepodcast of Horrors with James, Kristina, and Chris.
Hello.
Hello there. How's everybody doing out there?
Great.
See, I didn't want you to feel alone, James. James's
He
voice
sounded normal.
He did. He did,
I
actually.
can get one single word out and sound normal.
He can get one word out. Best to your mother. Hey, guys.
Hey, what are you drinking, Chris?
Me? Out of my bougie owl goblet. Just a nice little concoction that we like to call the poisonous kiss of the dark
It's bourbon
queen.
and Coke.
It's bourbon and Coke. That's what it is.
In a fucking goblet.
In
I
a
love it.
fucking goblet that I got for Christmas. Look at that. Katie and I each got one.
And he's sullying it with bourbon and Coke.
Shut up. It's not sullying. Hers has got a tree.
He likes to bust out his finest glassware for his Coca-Cola.
James, it makes him happy.
Okay.
Well, it's not making him happy correctly.
Okay. The Vikings would drink like freaking mead, which wasn't
Mead
that
is
fancy.
awesome.
Mead is awesome, but it's not fancy. It's basically liquid bread. I mean,
You need to leave meat out of this.
nope. Never. Kristina, what are you drinking?
I have beer. Ozark Beer Company Cream Stout. Not an advertisement. They have nothing to do with us. So I'm sure they wouldn't approve. So just saying, it's good though.
Not since dumping their sister.
It's super good though.
They have nothing to do with us since then. We're dead to them now. Not even a Christmas card.
Not
So,
even.
mm.
Whatever. We don't need them.
We don't need them.
But the beer is good, so I'm
Their
drinking
beer,
it.
yeah, their beer is good. So I don't know why I'm repeating every other word she says. Like, they're good. Yeah, they're good. Let's get
I think that
started.
means you love me.
I do love you. Like, a lot. All righty. Go right ahead. Dive in, girl. Go get it.
Let's get to it. Yes, this is my second beer. We're going to be talking about psychic shit today. So,
Yay, psychic shit.
I love me
Hold
some
on to your-
psychic shit.
There's
Hold
our
on.
title.
hold on to your panties, folks. We're talking about psychic shit.
Hold on to your broomstick and your tarot cards, fuck face. We're doing psychic shit today.
Okay, so I'm going to preface this with I am not going to be looking at like the hypotheses about like where psychic senses may come from. None of that. So get out of here with that. We're just talking straight up woo-woo psychic senses.
Yeah, get the hell out.
Do not try to rationalize this.
It's
We don't
nothing.
need your stinking hypotheses.
It's nothing but woo-woo in here.
All right. Well, I mean, so in the episode where we interviewed Allie, if you haven't listened to that, Allie Cardinale is the owner of Bearbridge Academy of Witchcraft and Psychic Development. Okay. And so
And
we
he is
interviewed
psychic
him.
AF.
He is psychic AF. And he also teaches a mediumship and psychic development course, which I
So
have
you too
taken.
can be psychic AF.
That's right. And it's super fun. But I say that because a lot of the information comes from Allie himself. So, like take his class if you want the full, like real business here, but I did almost no other research. So here we go.
I did almost no
You
prep for
did
this.
pay to take an entire course. I mean,
We're
it's
just
kind of
gonna-
like
We're
top
just
tier
gonna
research
make
right
this
there.
shit up as we go. Just buckle your horses. I don't know what's gonna fucking happen. But let's ride this bitch.
I do not know what's going to come out of my mouth. All right. Anyway, so, well, psychic phenomena are like a tale as old as time, right? Like we got prophets out the wazoo. We got spiritualist movement. We got
Can't
people
turn a
talking the
corner
dead.
without running into the prophet nowadays.
You really can't. It's a lot. So I wanted to take this episode and kind of explain a little bit more about the clear senses. Okay. So when people think about like the clear senses, they automatically think about clairvoyance. Okay. Usually that's the only one they know. It's clairvoyance, right? But there are actually like 7. So and also people when they like how it's depicted in the media a lot is like not only mental images or seeing things, right? It's seeing the future. And so I did want to go into like how those two things are actually kind of different. So first off, the clairsenses kind of act as like the medium or the vehicle with which you receive psychic information. Okay. And it can be a little bit different for everybody. But you could receive images, sure, with their clairvoyance. You could receive like you could hear something, that's clairaudience, right? But those things could be happening. You could be picking that up from the environment around you, like something that's happening currently, right? Precognition is something where you are predicting future events. Basically, you're getting information about future events. So clear senses can be kind of separate from that, right? So that it's like I don't know how else to express it, like the avenue with which like this information is coming in. All right.
So could you say that images killed the clairaudience star?
No. They may in fact work together.
But that doesn't parody a song title.
Okay, so precognition is kind of a separate ability. Just because you're like psychic and you pick up a lot of information through your clear senses doesn't necessarily mean you're picking up future events. Okay, so it's kind of a separate idea. So let's talk about the clear senses. Do you guys know them?
No, but I already have questions.
I'm just going along for this ride.
Okay. Do you want to ask your questions or do you want me to go through the list of clear senses real quick and then ask your questions? What would you like?
I guess I can pop my question out first. So what's assuming there is one, what is the psychic community's view of time? And this is me dragging the science back into this, sorry.
Oh shit.
but yeah, like is this to suggest that time isn't necessarily linear? Because I guess the point of being able to see the future or a future event is that you could preempt it, which would kind of go around the otherwise normal progression of time, right? If you're able, so as to say in less rambly terms, time is fluid and not static. So if you're seeing a future event, it's not necessarily written in stone. Is that like it brings up so many time questions just by the single idea that you could see the future.
Okay, so I can't speak with any authority about what the psychic community believes or not believes because I don't think there is a consensus.
You're not their monolithic representative.
I'm definitely not, and from what I've seen on the internet about psychic things, there is like zero consensus. They call things, they refer to clairvoyance a lot and then describe something totally different. So it's like not cohesive and tied up in a bow. And so I don't think that there's a consistent message across the psychic community about time. My personal belief, I guess, on time is that it really isn't necessarily linear. But as far as like, when I read tarot cards, so you said, if you see the future, then you should be able to do something about it. Like that's kind of the idea, right? But when you read tarot cards, the idea is these are some possible outcomes, but because we are constantly making choices, that outcome could become totally different depending on the choices that you make. So it's like, here's your tarot card spread. Based on what you're doing now, this is the likely outcome. But you can change that at any time. Like it's not set in stone. And as far as like people actually having precognition, and usually it comes in dreams, right? Like those are really common stories. From what I've seen, it's usually not helpful. Like they can't actually do anything about it, can't stop it. Just for some reason, they have had this precognitive dream that, and then later it's like, oh shit, that was related, but I couldn't have done anything about it. So it's
So in that case, the future
not
is kind of
totally useful.
static. The future is set, and you're just seeing it to make your life suck more.
Well, I mean, not necessarily. It's just that you don't know what you could do to prevent it. Because when you're seeing the thing, right, sometimes you don't even know what you're actually seeing. So there's an element of like retrospect to it, which will be an future episode when I talk about the British Premonition Bureau, but because they do like research that, and it's very interesting. But that actually would go into more psychology than we're doing today. So
I say time is a construct, okay?
It is. Construct. Okay, so let's talk about the clear senses themselves, because we did mention them in the interview, and I feel like that's not like common knowledge. Like everybody doesn't just know what these things are, right? So you already talk about like these are the medium with which you receive the information. Okay, so there are like 7 clear senses. Clair means clear in French. Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about is clairsentience. So that would be like clear feeling. So clairsentience is when you're like picking up psychic information and you're feeling it either emotionally or through physically, like through your body sensations. So like, and it's not the same as like being an empathetic person. That's kind of a human, like normal thing people talk about. I'm an empath and all that. They're not necessarily the same. So like clairsentience is saying, okay, James has a pain in the left side of his abdomen for some reason, and I'm in Arkansas, he's in Texas, and I feel a pain in the same spot in my left abdomen suddenly, and that's like me picking up your body sensation because we're kind of connected, right? Like we're friends, so I might be able to do that. Or not saying that James actually has any sort of pains or that I'm picking anything up.
Or if Kristina was suddenly sitting there walking and she's like, why do I suddenly feel like I've got a big giant pain in my ass? Oh, Chris is annoying James again. Damn it.
Exactly.
I know. So if I'm understanding correctly, it's basically kind of a epistemological thing to be aware of here, right? So to be, empathy in the common vernacular, right, is just it's a matter of emotional intelligence. There's nothing psychic about it. It's just you have the emotional intelligence to be able to put yourself in someone's shoes and understand how they're feeling. But to be an empath, minus the ick, not empathic, but to be an empath, noun, is like at another level entirely. You aren't conceptualizing what they're feeling. You're feeling what they're feeling with them simultaneously in actuality.
Well, that's how people use empath, but that would be clairsentience.
Okay.
So like if I'm feeling strongly, suddenly, terrible grief, and I've not experienced any grief, nobody around me, like, I'm not talking to someone that is experiencing grief, that would be a clear sense. I'm like picking that up. That might have come from someone else, right? But like if they're in the room, y'all are talking about it, and you feel terribly and strong grief, that would be empathy.
I've read articles about, especially with parents and kids, like especially like that, or twins, They will often feel each other's pain even across long
Like Luke and
distances.
Leia.
Yeah, like Luke and Leia.
Yeah, exactly.
But
It's part of the Force.
it is. It's real. But yeah, I get that.
I'm here for it.
I like it. I mean, but yeah, I've read about a lot of that where it's like, a mother knows suddenly that something's wrong with her child because she can feel his pain in a way, like, or his fear, or something is just like, it just hits you.
Mhm.
And then you go and you check on him and you find out, yeah, something was wrong. So
Yeah.
I'm a lot less skeptical toward the idea of psychic phenomenon than I am other topics, because I think, like, if you look at what we're learning in science, not that I'm any expert in the matter, just layman's understanding here, but we do know with some degree of confidence that our reality, our universe, whatever, is made of all these multiple tens, at least, of layers of dimensions of reality that we are incapable of, at least for now, with what we have to work with now, we're incapable of perceiving, right? Like, we can
Mhm.
only perceive the 4 dimensions that we know to operate in, right? But there's a lot more. So
Yeah.
it does, and you combine that with, we're relatively certain-ish that there are not just the universe, but there's, multiple universes out there. I mean, with those two things on the table, it doesn't seem to stretch that what we regard as psychic and as woo-woo for now is something that could be scientifically explained and understood later, when, assuming we're able to better traverse and perceive those other planes of reality that exist, we just can't perceive them.
Yeah. I agree. I feel like probably, maybe this is my optimism, and probably in the future we'll be able to scientifically explain these things, and it won't be taboo to talk about. We'll be more embracing of the concept. But I mean, I feel like animals do pretty remarkable things, and they don't necessarily know why they're doing them. They just do them, right? Like, they're animals that, like, sense that there's going to be a disaster coming, and they start to migrate. They move out of it, right? Out of the range. Birds have something in their brain that gives them the instinct and tells them that they need to go, south for the winter. Like,
Well, it's like,
it's not like a conscious decision. Like, their brain has it in them, and there's so much that we don't know about our brains and how they function. Why not the possibility of these things?
well, this is going to probably sound stupid, but what's always weirded me out, and I think is something to consider if you're skeptical about it, is like, just go into a crowded area and stare at somebody in the back of the head from
Yes.
across the room.
Oh,
And after long enough, they're going to notice and turn around and look.
Yes.
That's
They're gonna
always
feel
like,
it.
how does that work?
Yeah.
So Granny, my late grandmother, for those who don't know, she believed in that you could stare at somebody. And she claimed she said she did it to my grandfather once. He was asleep. And I'm like, she's telling me the story, and she says she wanted him to wake up, but she didn't want to physically wake him up. So she just stared at him. And she said just a few minutes went by, and he suddenly opened his eyes and looked, and sure enough, yeah, it woke him up. And I was
Mhm.
like, wait, so my poor grandfather just was in this blissful sleep, and then suddenly just wakes up and doesn't know why, and the first thing he sees is his wife staring at him intently. Like, Gran, I could tell you 2 things are going through his mind. Either you want to have relations, or he's done something wrong.
He's like, I didn't get another life insurance policy. Don't even think about it.
Like, if I woke up
Stop
and
staring at
found
me.
if I woke up and Kate was just staring at me, I would be scared. Be like, oh shit, this is it. This is it.
Mhm.
This is the moment I've waited for. She snapped. I snored too loud. She's gonna kill me.
Yeah. But that's a phenomena. Like, we don't know why necessarily that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're like me and people watch a lot. This is something you notice all the freaking time.
Mhm. All right. So the next one is claircognizance. So This one might be a little lesser known. This is really just like knowing something you have basically no right to know. Like, why would you know it? You just suddenly, it's like knowledge dropped into your mind from outer space, and suddenly you know
How
something that
dare you
wouldn't
know
have
That's
this?
kind of
before.
knowledge.
How dare
Right?
you? Why do you know?
I
How
like
do
to
you
randomly
know?
know things.
How do you know that I have a fetish for teddy bears and pickle juice?
And I think we kind of mentioned this in the Alley interview where we talked about the theory that like geniuses might be just highly sensitive in claircognizance. That might be part of it. So they're able to like obtain information that, like, why did they even know that? Where did that come from?
So they have wireless.
Yes, they've got their own like Wi-Fi, just like all right. And then the next one is the one we see in TV all the time that I mentioned earlier, clairvoyance, right? We're getting images. The degrees with which you receive, well, really with any of these, the degree with which you receive any of this information through any of these senses varies from person to person, right? So you can be highly sensitive as a clairvoyant, but maybe you're not super clairsentient, like you're a potato there. But so it just kind of varies. But clairvoyance, yeah, your images, that's where you're seeing stuff. The next one, like I never hear anything about ever. Actually, the next two, clairgustance, and that's like
Is that like psychic farts? So it's my
oh,
clairgustance.
oh, yucky.
Gusty.
It's tasting, so that was really upsetting.
You are gross. Just so you know, that's gross.
So you're able to taste something that is
It's a-
not like actually in your mouth.
It's a bit nutty. Just a bit. Tastes like walnuts.
Okay.
Tastes like carrots and throw up.
Which is nicely paired with clair aliens, which is smell. Clear smelling.
That sounds like some illegal drink they have on Star Trek. It's like, you know that aliens is forbidden, Captain. I don't care. Pour me another glass.
Which
Okay.
captain is this?
Captain None of your
I
business.
don't know any of this.
Captain None of your business.
None of your business.
Captain
The
Who
little river
cares?
captain
Captain Cool. It's me.
of the USS F off.
Oh my god.
Okay, so the example that I'm thinking of off the top of my head here for clairgustance and clairalience. So if you're like a psychic medium and you're able to start picking up like the scent of someone's cigar and also the taste, right? So that's you're not smoking a cigar. No one is smoking a cigar in your vicinity, but the spirit that you were like interacting with, you have picked up the Cuban cigars were their favorite. And so they're like sending that information to you. And
So they
that's how
gotta be
you
the
receive
worst
it.
ones to do seances with because you're like, this tastes like your grandmother.
Oh my god! Oh!
She ate a lot of pineapple.
I hate you so much right now.
Very careful which type of psychic you choose for the seance.
Oh,
May vary.
oh. I was gonna. Okay, anyway, if we're that thing that's gonna wake me up in a cold sweat at 3 a.m., I wonder. You remember me telling you that story about in my old home with the cigarette smoke kind of just appearing?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's what that made me think of. Like, I wonder if maybe that's what it was. Like, you know?
Yeah, like a clear sense. Maybe. But if you're seeing it, is it clairvoyance then? Or you're seeing it, smelling it, right?
We're seeing it and smelling it. Like
so it's both.
It's like somebody is literally there smoking, like chain smoking like crazy.
So maybe like a clairvoyance, clairalience situation.
Yeah.
you're
But did
clear.
everybody
Well,
experience it though?
there was only me and my sister who was too little, and my
Okay.
stepmother at the time, Courtney's mother, and she was the one that noticed it first. She smelled it. She says, "Do you smell that?" I said, "Yeah, it's cigarette smoke." She's like, "Yeah." And then we were kept smelling it, and then after I guess a short time passed, and that's when we were like, "I can see it." She's like, "I can too." And she like, I remember Janet, she just waved her hand in the air and it like moved like
Oh,
smoke.
well, it was like actually like physically
It
there.
was there.
Mm,
So we were just kind of like, what is happening?
I don't know.
Now, going towards something else that happened to me recently, I went to visit my dad and my grandmother and my grandfather's graves. And I remember after unloading some feelings and such, when I walked back to the car, I got in and I could smell Gran's hairspray. Like, I don't know if either of you two ever remembered, but she used to layer her hair with hairspray. And anytime I hugged her, and she was a little woman, so when I hugged her, her head was like right here. So my nose was right in her head.
Mm-hmm.
It was just hairspray. And it
Oh,
was like I
wow.
got into the van and I could smell that hairspray, and I just like, hey, Gran. Like,
Oh,
it made me feel really
yes.
good, like she was nearby.
Like you got to interact with her through one of your clear senses. That's
Yeah.
You
cool.
used your Claire Smelly.
It's
I'm not
nice
good
to
with
know.
these
It's nice
terms.
to know that even in the afterlife, Gran is still hairspraying her hair like I knew she would.
Old habits, you know.
That is a hairspray product with a really good distribution chain.
Well, it's the smell I've always associated with her. Like, I know that's weird, but in a weird way, it was comforting. Like, anytime, even when I was a kid and I would hug her, I could smell her hairspray because that was the most dominant smell on her. Because, I mean, she sprayed the shit out of her hair. It was like a helmet. But even as a child, yeah, it was like when I smelled that, I knew I was with Gran. Like, those are the kind of smells that I associated with her. And so it was like, yeah, as soon as I smelled it, like I got all weepy. Like, oh my God, like she was just in the car,
Hmm.
which is what I wanted. Like I was having a moment where I kept wishing I could see her, wishing I could hear her, and I was saying that at her grave. Like, I miss you. I would give anything just to hear you, to have one vision of you, anything, because I was at a low moment, and and then of course I got to that point where I was like, well, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to turn, and I'm not going to see her. And then I just kind of pushed that out of my head, and I walked back to the van, and then opened that door. And even as I was stepping in, I was like, what? It was her. And I was like, I got my message. I got my response. So
You did. I don't know if this would be too dark for a commercial, but that would make for a really great hairspray commercial. Be one of those tearjerker ones.
are you missing your dead grandmother who loved that hairspray? Well, it stays with her, even in the afterlife.
Hmm. All right, the next one is clear audience. So that's the hearing. Okay, so you might hear a voice, uh, not to be confused with any psychological issues. You know, if you're hearing a lot of voices, go get checked out to make sure. But or like sounds like I've heard like whistling once, or you might hear like a ring of a bell or something like that, and it might be related to something that's happening, right? Those are just kind of random things, but so clear hearing. And then the last one we're going to talk about is clear tangents. Okay, so this is where you're touching like a physical item and you're able to pick up information from that item. So what clear tangents does though is it's going to trigger your other clear senses. So if you are clear tangent, you're going to receive the information, yes, by touching it, but you're gonna either whatever you're strongest in, if it's clear audience, you might hear someone coughing. They were coughing last time they touched this, or something like that, right? Like you're hearing something associated with the object. Or if you're clairsentient, then you might feel happy, like giddy, because the person that touched this last was super happy when they picked this out and gifted it to you. So it like triggers your other clairsenses. So that's like how you're interpreting the information.
So that one, I get it. So is that one unique in that you will never only have it, like it's always going to be paired with another one?
I believe so. That is my understanding. Yes, because you have to have like those other things to be able to interpret, or not even interpret, but to like receive any information. Right.
See, this is why I've never talked about this openly, I don't think. James, correct me if I'm wrong. This is one of the reasons I like going through like antique shops. Like we have several nearby where I'm located. And I just actually recently went into both of them doing some Christmas shopping. And the one thing I've always noticed is that when I walk through, like some of these things are old. And when I touch them, it's like, I don't know, I feel a certain way. Like I will feel like all this history's there. Like, and especially if I open it up, I can see like there was a book I found a couple of years ago in this antique shop, and there were just notes written, everyday notes. Like I guess they kind of like were in a hurry, and so they scribbled stuff into the first book they could grab. But these are notes that were written 60, 70 years ago. And it was like it was almost like I could feel their emotions at the time. And it was like I could feel like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like history comes alive for me when I walk through antique shops. Like I'll just stroke my fingers across furniture, and it's almost like I can feel the history behind it, the people who owned it. And it's something I've always enjoyed, but I just always figured it was less more empathic, I guess, in that sense, like something I just enjoyed the history of it, the smell, the feelings, like I can smell it all. All the senses. So
Yeah. I feel like if you're getting like strong feelings from it though, it's probably not empathy, right? It's not, because there's no like person to standing there talking to you, or you're getting an impression from, right? It's just an object.
well, something for me too is like, and we've never talked about it on the show, but it's something that James and I have talked about. And I think we've talked about it with you too. It was something that Heather got us into, was the enneagrams.
The
Oh,
Enneagram.
Enneagrams. And I'm what's known as a 4.
Mhm.
And one of the things about 4s is I feel 50 million things all at once. But I really feel it when I go through like shops like that. Like it's like the lives that surrounded this object. Like it's almost like I can feel it. It's just like joy and sadness and happiness and anticipation and love and heartbreak and try. I love it. I love walking through those stores because it's like I'm for a moment somebody else. It's like I can feel echoes. Does that make sense? Something like that.
Yeah.
So
Makes complete sense. I feel like that too. And I mean, I go to antique stores and I kind of get a similar feeling, but I especially feel it when I go, and this may be more just like an energy of a place, right? Like when I go when I went to the some of the Greek ruins and some of the ruins in Italy. And when I go to Paris or things like that, where there's like so much, like a long history, it's like you can feel just 1,000 lives lived. It's like powerful, but also kind of overwhelming.
it is. It's sometimes I can't even pinpoint the exact feeling. It's like case in point, it was actually several years ago. There was an old radio, the kind of radios they had in your living room you would listen to stories on before TV. It was one of those old tube radios. And I remember when I took a picture of it and I put my hands across it, and it was like all of a sudden I could feel the anticipation, the excitement of, oh, my show's on.
Mhm.
And it was almost like I wanted to sit down in front of that and listen, to George and Gracie or The Shadow or whatever show is about to come on. Like you could feel the excitement, the anticipation, because this was entertainment in the evening. And you
Yeah.
knew that. But of course, I never knew if it was just my knowledge giving me that feeling, or if it was just like I was feeling maybe the energy around it. Because
Mhm.
obviously that is what people felt around that particular radio. They
Or there were a lot of people that just kind of were bored and sat next to it. Right? Like
I mean, generally no, though. Most of the time, that was their escape. Like they were bored in most everything else, but when it came time to the radio shows, whether it was news or just the standard, stories, Adventures of Superman, or whatever they were listening to, um, it was really a device that was centered around escaping reality.
Mhm.
And so when you thought about that, you could feel it. You could feel that joy, like we feel today when we watch a good movie or a TV show that really moves us. For them back then, all that emotion I felt like kind of seeped into the wood of that radio sitting there in this antique store, and it seeped back out a little bit as you walk past it if
Mhm.
you're receptive to it. So
Yeah. Well, I definitely wouldn't like immediately dismiss it as just your knowledge though of that, because I was going to save it for later, but like one of the things like when we're talking about psychic senses is, and a lot of people are like, well, I'm just a potato and I don't receive stuff. It's because a lot of it's because you're telling yourself that story, right? And when you do receive something like that, you immediately dismiss it. So next time, just don't immediately dismiss it. Just be like, okay, I received that. Thank you.
I will say that since we started doing this show, and especially after we talked with Allie,
Mhm.
I've been trying to be a lot more open. And also since my father passed away too, like my sister keeps talking about having experiences, and recently my stepmother, who is very practical and
Mhm.
down to earth, and she kept saying she's never experienced this, and then just dropped it on me. Well, when I go to the cemetery, I hear him sometimes. And I went,
Whoa, that gave me
wait.
chills.
And I said, what do you mean you hear him? Like in your head? She goes, no, I physically hear him. And I went, what? And she's like, yeah. She says he has heard his voice say something like, and I'm paraphrasing or trying to draw from memory, something like, I'm glad you're here. Or it's okay. Or I appreciate that. Like not once, not twice, multiple times. But I don't hear anything.
Mhm.
And when he was alive, there's times I was like, God, will this man shut up? And now I would give anything just to hear that goofball say one more thing. So, yeah.
So, just doing some reflecting, listening to y'all, I as I'm sure you'll be surprised to know, I don't tend to have many experiences like that, but I can think of one. Not too long ago, I'm going to try not to go into too specific in detail so I don't accidentally call somebody out who doesn't deserve to be called out. But there was a church I went to, basically a family member's church I went to, in like the middle of nowhere, rural Texas. And it was one of those, and I hate that this one word kind of tells you everything, but this one word tells you everything. It was very pro-Trump crowd by
Mhm.
demographic, but middle of nowhere, middle of the woods, hyper conservative, old-timey church. And basically the guy that was preaching there, I would say it was less preaching. It was more of this really old dude who just wanted to ramble about whatever was on his mind at the moment, like very little, if any, scripture references of any kind. It was just him rallying off about whatever he was pissed off about the moment, and that was your sermon. and a lot of it was very blatantly going on about how, to paraphrase, all the other denominations are wrong and we're the only ones that are right, and how everybody's so wrong and evil and trying to lead us the wrong way and blah blah. You know the drill, right?
Yeah.
It was all of that cranked up to 11. And as you know, I don't have any issues typically being a rather vocal person. So like, as soon as I was out of that service, I was telling said family member and putting it in, I try to put things in terms of the person I'm talking to so they get my point. But I was telling them, I was like, dude, this is the devil's church, man. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
if there's, because I could feel there was a spirit there, but it ain't holy.
Yeah.
And it was the atmosphere was just heavily oppressive. It was bitter anger, the epitome of cynicism. It was just, there was no love, no hope, no light in this place. And then, like, that's the one time I was like, yeah, I could feel that just sitting in the room, because I just wanted to run and get the hell out of there as fast as I could.
Oh my gosh. So, there is a book that I have called Russian Black Magic, and they do a lot of like desecration stuff with churches and things like that. That's not really my bag, but I like magic, so I'm going to read the book. One part they talk about is church demons, and how there are entities or demons, whatever you want to call them, that feed off the energy of churches, because there's so much, like, even when it's good, like there's so much energy that is dumped right into one concentrated spot.
Yeah.
And they like, it's almost like they live underneath there and just like absorb that energy. And especially, I feel like, especially with something like that, where it's just like anger and, trying to like turn people against other people and just all this vitriol, probably had a pretty strong church demon, quote unquote.
Well, yeah,
crazy.
I mean, of course, the traditional scripture and whatnot talks about various other spirits, so it's not by no means a leap that if you open your doors or even your church doors to stuff like that, it's going to come in. Like, don't do that.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But you felt it, so it was like almost
yeah.
like a clear sentient feeling. That's interesting. Oh, my thing died. There we go.
So I don't know what that says, if I just had a breakthrough moment where I actually felt something, or what the presence of there was so overwhelming and so heavy that even I could pick up on it. Either way.
Yeah, I think either way, accept it and then just be like, okay, I received that.
Oh yeah, but it's like, I'm never setting foot in there again.
Yeah, never doing that again, but glad I picked up on it. However I picked up on it, I'm glad I picked up on it. Yeah, because I'll just jump down to that note and then we can roll back up. But so you can get in your own way, right? So we already talked about like dismissing the psychic information when it comes in is one of the number one things that, and I think it's like our society that has taught us to do that, right? So it's been very effective at shutting us off from whatever the psychic thing is, right? It's been very effective at cutting us off from that. So, getting a feeling like that and then automatically being like, no, it was just X, Y, and Z, trying to rationalize it too much in a dismissive way, kind of works counterproductive, right? Like, so if you want to develop your psychic sense, you don't want to just throw that information in the trash, because your brain will just kind of stop doing it, basically. So maybe you don't want to like receive something and then act on it without thinking about it, but depending on the situation, I'm not condoning like going out and doing anything crazy just because you thought maybe something was going to happen, right? But acting with some common sense, I guess. That church, for example, it's okay to just to think, okay, that might have been me receiving some psychic information. I'm going to move on from the situation. It's not like you need to do anything extreme
Right,
or,
of course, yeah.
Okay, I don't want anybody to think that I'm like condoning doing crazy stuff just because
No.
of like a psychic sense you got.
But the thing is, I
Um,
think even for our beliefs, when you clearly know that something that is occurring is wrong, and not just wrong, but I don't want to say evil, but very dark in a lot of its basis, lies, deceit, turning people against each other. If you believe in any kind of darkness, if you believe that evil has any kind of form, then it's going to be there. It's hard for you not to. Like, even the devout Christians believe in the devil and demons and such. And, like, I think when you're doing wrong and doing harm and spreading hatred, it's connected to things that are dark. It's not necessarily that they are dark, but they're being prone to darkness. Yes, I know. I know.
well, okay, not even anything as extreme as that, right? Like, so usually people get what's called a gut feeling about something, right? It's okay to acknowledge that gut feeling and not immediately dismiss it, right? You don't have to, okay, I'm in a room with someone, I get a gut feeling that they're kind of a piece of shit. You don't have to go and then scream in their face or punch them, right? Like, you don't have to like do anything like that. But it's okay if you're like, okay, I'm going to excuse myself from this experience.
Knowing something
Or
doesn't give you
I,
the need to take action or something. It just means
yeah,
that you're aware of your surroundings, you're aware of the vibe, the synergy around you.
yeah. So I feel like I just wanted to make that clear. Like, I'm not just saying like any old thought that comes into your head, you should do something extreme in response to it.
No, you
I
should
like
never do
to.
anything. Extreme situations doesn't necessarily mean you need to do something extreme. It just means take care of yourself, like remove
Or that,
yourself.
and even on some things, or that you even need to do anything at all. Just acknowledge that you got that thing, and then as long as you don't feel like you are in danger, you're fine. Like, just acknowledge it.
Yeah, just remove yourself when you can from that toxic environment. That's the
Mhm.
most that you need to really do.
I like to frame things in terms of what I like to call just like healthy skepticism. And what I mean by that is like if you're skeptical, be aware of why you're skeptical. So I think a lot of people are heavily skeptical of things because they just think everything is BS, and that's more cynicism, I would say, than skepticism. And
Right.
just being very closed-minded, and the world is what I see, and that's the end. It's just where's the fun in that? But I think a healthy skepticism is not from that motive. It's from a motive of, we're limited in what we can understand as humans, and the world around us is full of things that we can interpret as false positives and false negatives. So if we have enough skepticism to question things, to figure out what we can rationalize to an answer or something else, what remains unanswered after those questions is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it's like just healthy skepticism, and that's how you do science, right? Like,
Yeah.
part of science is questioning your own conclusions over and over and over again until you run out of questions to throw at it, and then you take it seriously.
Right.
And that's
So
how I
yeah,
look at things.
no, I totally agree. And so I'm not saying don't be skeptical of things. I guess what I am saying is don't be cynical. Don't immediately shut something off just because you're like, that can't be true.
Yeah.
That just cannot be true. Okay. So now that we've clarified that. Okay, so other ways you can get in your own way though. This is my number one, anxiety. I am a constant nervous hummingbird, and that has been a huge blocker for me because you can't really get out of your own way, right? Like when you're super anxious, you're not able to open yourself up to receiving information much because you're already freaking out from your own mind. So that's one way. And then, yeah, just telling yourself you can't do it. So your negative Nancy talk all the time, that's going to get in your way, which kind of ties back into cynicism, but also, I guess, self-esteem a little bit. Okay, what I skipped over here in my beautiful notes. So there are also areas with which you might be more proficient at picking up. And so what I mean by that is, like, for example, I have been better at picking up dynamics of relationships, personalities, and then I can get kind of an overall feeling of a situation, but I'm not good at details. Okay. So those are different areas, and people have different strengths, right? So there might be other people who are really good at picking up on people's hopes, their desires, their fears, what they're hiding. Some people are really good at that. And some people that I've like done exercises with are really good at details, like minute details. And I can't do that at all. I think there are more areas like that, like they're called something. Allie's class has a lot more information, but just kind of keep that in mind. So when we go into our section here about telepathy, because you can do this at home and you can practice your psychic abilities with your friends. So, you know, telepathy is like communicating with your mind, right? So you're sending a thought, a memory, an idea, even just something as simple as like a thing in your room, like, and you're trying to send that mental message to the other person, right? So we've talked about the clear senses, and now we just like briefly brushed over the areas with which you might be better at picking up information. So if we're doing a telepathic exercise, okay, so me and James, we're going to do a telepathic exercise. Because we're beginners, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to send you a memory. Okay, so now you have something to focus on, right? Like there's like an area. You're not just out there in the big wide universe all by yourself floating around trying to pick something up. Okay, so there's a topic, but it's not too detailed. All right, so you're going to want to calm yourself down. You're going to want to open up that third eye, which is not necessarily in your forehead. So we'll have to talk about the third eye another time. But
as I say, keep in mind that a lot of people like me, the first time you brought up with me, have no idea what third eye means.
Okay, so a lot of people think of your third eye as that center part, like right here, almost between your eyebrows, but just a little bit above, right?
Like in the anime.
Yeah, and that's like the common spot, because they say the pineal gland is like near there, like in your brain.
Oh, okay.
And they don't really know necessarily what all the pineal gland does. So in the metaphysical groups, they like to say, oh yeah, your third eye is just right there. But if you take Allie's class, he believes, and he gets this from other sources that I can't remember, but that not everybody, their third eye comes from that spot. Okay, mine does, but there were people in my classes that had like their palms would get tingly. So that would probably be where their third eye is instead of the middle of their forehead. All right, so we're doing this telepathic exercise. We've calmed ourselves down. We've taken Allie's class, so we already know how to open our third eye. I'm sending a memory. Okay, so we've talked about the clear senses. So if we say James's strongest senses are clairsentience, that one's kind of easy, right? So James's strongest sense is clairsentience, and he's really good at like relationship dynamics. So I send him a memory and he picks up that it's two people arguing, they're really mad at each other, they have a contentious relationship. Okay, so that's not super detailed, right? But this is a beginner exercise. You're like trying to figure out how these things work. And also psychic information is kind of not always detailed. Then that's kind of the misconception about it. Like people get a lot from movies, right? And it's this like really detailed thing that they can act on and they know everything that's going on. The psychic information doesn't always behave that way and usually doesn't. And so the memory I sent was like me and my dad be in an argument and slamming doors. We're just mad at each other, right? So that's just an example. So you used your clairsentience because that was your strongest ability. And the area was like relationships, right? So you were able to pick that up, but you didn't hear a door slam. You didn't see us like fighting. You didn't pick up the clothes that I was wearing or anything like that. Okay. So I think that I've gone on long enough.
So something that kind of excites me about this topic is I guess if you were to strip away a lot of my own various sundry beliefs and whatnot, the reason I believe in religious and spiritual who's its and what's its, it is because like if you strip all that away, at the core of it is a belief that I think reality is a lot more than strictly the material, right? I believe that we aren't simply our bodies and our brains, that we are spiritual entities beyond and above that. And I get excited seeing all these other swaths of people from other backgrounds and other traditions and other philosophies kind of coming to the same conclusion. And it's just we all put it into different terms, but it's a lot of the same thing. I think that we are more than what we see in the mirror. And I get really excited about our collectively becoming more and more conscious of that. And I think another thing to think about, I say to listeners, is that we understand things in the language we know. So like in the modern psychic communities, it's going to be in terms of clairvoyance, clairsentience, whatnot. I'd say like in my tradition, like from Christian or Jewish scriptures or whatever, prophecy. If it's, you say potato, I say potato, but it's describing the same thing. And even older, religious traditions that predate Abrahamic or whatever, you've long had village shaman, village sages. So like this is nothing new, but we're all trying to grasp it and put words to it in our own ways. And I think we're all kind of stumbling over the same stuff. And I get excited about that because like, what's the next I lost the word.
The next stage. There's
what's the next frontier that we're
stage.
about to trip over in this discovery? Yeah.
We're only just beginning here. And it's almost like we're rediscovering knowledge that people maybe already had. So we maybe somehow we're reset a little bit and now we're playing catch up.
Well, that's the other thing I was wanting to kind of throw out there is I wonder, I guess it's probably kind of a given. It's not really a mystery here, but I think a lot of these topics were a lot better received in ancient times, right? Because like prophecy wasn't exactly something that village shamans were commonplace, right?
I think we were a lot more open to spiritual back then.
Right. And skeptics might argue because we're more primitive or whatever. I would argue that perhaps in our modern day and time, we unfortunately have too much noise that's kind of blocking us. And I'm spitballing, not that I know, but maybe we have too much noise. I mean, we have more people with ADD and anxiety than ever, right? Because of the kind of culture and kind of society and the kind of pace that our society moves in. But with the constant noise, the constant distractions, the constant hustle and bustle and rush of our lives, that's got to be in the way.
Well, and focus is a big part of it. Like, you have to really put a lot of focus and intention on like calming yourself down, being in this present moment, opening yourself up, like, and I have a difficult time with that. And I think that probably most people in this modern era really do. Like, I'm constantly in my head. I'm constantly thinking. You can't receive any psychic information if your brain's already busy. Like,
Yeah.
Well, and I
The
It's
think
so
Wi-Fi is
difficult.
overloaded, man.
yeah,
think
it's already creaking along.
I think it's also the fact that societal confines that constructs that we put ourselves to. That's like, well, we have to be more practical and we have to be more scientific, and it's like, well, that doesn't. And the thing is, James and I especially, we love science. We're not scientists in any nature, but I think I would say we have a great appreciation for science and respect for science. But there was a time where science was about being open-minded to the possibilities of things, no matter how crazy they were. It was about embracing ideas that did not confine to societal norms. There was a time where science said, well, we were the center of the universe, and it took great minds to grasp the concept and the idea of something different that allowed us to progress. So I think that's a lot of issues that we run in today, is just that
Yeah.
we confine ourselves to societal norms, where it's like, well, science doesn't state that.
I think a lot of it, if you get to the core of that, it's about, for as a lot of big, huge good that it did generally do for us, the Enlightenment also screwed us up.
Mhm.
We got kind of full of ourselves.
Yes.
Big brain thinking after the Enlightenment.
I mean, I agree. And like, I know I talk a lot about magic, and I've done a whole episode about psychic stuff and talk about what the witchy school I do classes with. But I do like science. I appreciate science. Like, and when confronted with, new information, I am willing to concede. Like, I'm not saying that
Well,
it's not, there can't be a logical explanation for something. But even with something like this, I'm like, I feel like at some point there will be a scientific explanation for it.
see,
Like,
I've always,
like it comes from somewhere.
this
yeah.
goes into something I have found really interesting. Like, I'm a big nerd, and so like I love all the Marvel movies, and these two can tell you, listeners, that I am a gigantic Whovian. And even recently, in the most recent new episode of Doctor Who, one of the characters drops something about like magic, and the Doctor says, no, magic is just science that you don't understand yet. Same thing they did in like the first Thor movie. Same line, basically.
That's exactly
Magic.
what I was about to bring up. I love
Magic
that. I love
is
that quote.
Yes, magic is just a science that you don't understand yet. You call it magic, but
you can't look at how infinitely large our universe is and have with a straight face, think that science has pretty much figured it all out. Come on.
science has
And
only
science is
scraped just the tip top of it all.
Yeah. And that's what's fun about it. That's the excitement.
exactly. And science is supposed to be based in curiosity. And I think that's really like our culture and our society where we've turned, where we're like, no curiosity, right? Like we've done it. And you're right, like the Enlightenment made us too big for our britches. Like, be curious, be open-minded.
Science has made a lot of society think that, has given a bit of arrogance in the thinking that they can answer these very big, huge questions. Is there life after death? Well, no. Well, you don't know that. You can't. I wouldn't answer that yet. Like, science has only scraped the bare surface of it all. And every day, more and more, I feel like we find just a little bit more, and we're able to say, oh, what you thought was make-believe might actually have some scientific basis to it.
Yeah, I'm always sad when I see the magic community very rightly, point out that over all of modern history, right, the past few thousand years, anyone claiming any sort of magic has been frowned upon, if not oppressed by. both the science and religious communities. And I'm like, I have one foot firmly planted in each of those. I'm like, oh crap.
And that's healthy.
Darn it.
But you have a curious mind, so you're so much more open to
Well, I don't
like
think
new
science or
information.
religion has to be. You don't have to be a dick about it, man. Don't be a
You
dick about it.
don't.
Do it the
Be
good way.
humble and be curious. That's what
Yeah.
life is all about. Yeah, when I was looking, so I did look on Reddit for some psychic, compelling psychic accounts or experiences, and I did pull a couple telepathic ones. We've gone on for a long time, so maybe for another episode, but I did see a post by someone that said that they were a medium and could speak to human spirits and had another psychic ability or something. I can remember what it was. And just reading through the comments, most people were okay, but there were like a couple people, one in particular really stood out with me. And they were like, anybody who says that they can speak to dead people is a charlatan and evil, all caps, and just like going on this tirade about how evil this person was.
Yeah, I was
and
like, by what authority can you say that?
Yeah, you don't see dead people, you don't have psychic abilities, you don't blah, all this stuff. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of anger behind that. I'm like, where does that come from? Do you have a bad experience, or like where is that coming from? Because the person that wrote their post, it was very short, and they even said in the post like they don't charge money, it's not like a professional thing. So to call them a charlatan, it's like, well, charlatans are usually out to gain something like money usually. So I don't know. It was just really disturbing to see how angry they were about it.
See, I will admit, when it comes to that, I'm very skeptical, but I'm not closed off either. I know that there is a lot of people in this world who love to claim to be something they're not because it makes them feel special, it makes them feel unique, and there are those, yes, who will take advantage of other people. And absolutely, those people need to be exposed. Those people need to be stopped who do actually take advantage. But to say every single one of them is a charlatan, that's very unscientific.
Yeah. Well, and I do get really upset like reading things about when the spiritualism movement in the late 1800s and the early 1900s came through, right? It had a big surge, and there were so many people who were frauds, proven frauds, and it's really upsetting to read about. So I'm not like there should be a healthy like skepticism about it. Like a lot of people have ulterior motives for using these modalities, right? Or claiming they're using them, but just like people that really don't have anything to gain, and they just say it, like, we really want to attack them and shut them down that quickly. Like, this is why a lot of people don't think they have psychic abilities, is because they're met with such anger and like immediate, no, you didn't experience that or see that.
You see, that's something I've considered too, was yes, in today's age, there's this one guy I actually follow on TikTok, and the thing is I like him. For the most part, but his big platform is he shuts those charlatans down, and he will go after them, and he'll be like, hey, if you can prove you're a psychic, I will pay you $10,000. And he challenges them constantly, and all of them back away. None of them have ever come at him, whatever. But while I see his side of it, I can also see the side of, well, you don't know how it works either. You're putting a lot of rules and confines onto this subject that you don't know how it works. You don't know what it entails. And even if you are shutting down people who are lying, who are being charlatans, who are being fake, you may also be scaring away people who genuinely might have an ability, who might be able to do it.
And challenges like that could also be shutting down that individual's ability to do it under pressure like that.
That too.
Their attitude, but also, yeah, we kind of touched on it earlier. Like psychic phenomena is not something that always comes through and it is super clear. Like, and you're really not technically supposed to like try to interpret the things that you receive. You're just supposed to say what you receive, right? Like I think where a lot of us go wrong is we try to interpret it and assign meaning to it, but we don't actually know. So we should really just say, here's the thing I received. If they can confirm it, then maybe it's a thing. If it's not, then, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Don't try to like say, well, here's this whole situation when really you just saw like one little piece of something, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Like sometimes I think he thinks it's like ghost whisperer, and the fact that they can actually just sit there and have conversations with anybody they want to, which
yeah, you can't do that.
Which some people claim to do. There's one girl who I've continued to follow, but I don't really believe her, I guess. She just says, she claims that she's just like, she sees dead people everywhere and she just casually talks with them as if you and I would conversate. And the things that I've gathered from talking with you and just other people, I'm like, I don't think it's quite that simple, but I don't know.
I'm not saying that that's not possible. I'm saying like just calling whoever you want and them actually showing up every single time. I don't believe that that's probably what's
now
happening.
That's true, because the thing is, she doesn't talk about calling forth individual spirits. She just mentions the fact that she just kind of casually sees them around.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and like I remember one of her stories, she said she was sitting on her front porch and just a spirit was just strolling by. And he noticed that she was looking at him. And he stopped and he was like, "Can you see me?" And she's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh. Hi." And she's like, "Hello." And then he just kept on like, "Oh, that was neat." Like,
yeah.
So
I am skeptical of like people that claim that they can just like call somebody and they just always show up. And only because like, I mean, you can call people on the telephone doesn't mean they're going to pick up every time. So like,
that's a good analogy.
To me, I have a lot more skepticism around like being able to do that every single time you're medium. I don't know about that, but I'm open-minded. I could be proven wrong.
I think that's important. So,
James, you look like you have a lot of thoughts.
I think that goes back to have enough skepticism to be able to sift through the false positives to the best of one's ability.
Yeah,
because like with any examination of any major claim of truth, that's part of the process. We have to. There's a lot of people out there who just say a bunch of stuff, and we've got to account for that and have the right kind of questions to sift through it.
True.
Don't always buy into everything, but there's a quote that I like to think about often, which is always be open to possibilities, because you never know. We don't know everything. Science has not answered everything. So don't make declarative statements saying, well, that's not possible. You don't know. That's what you think. That's what you believe, but you don't know. So
there are always possibilities.
There are always possibilities.
This has been really fun.
Yes.
We need to do a telepathic exercise. Oh my gosh. Our next episode should be us doing telepathic exercises.
James, why are you thinking about underwear?
I'm going to tell you right now, I will not be responsible for however I screwed this up.
Well, you know what? We're the editors. If it's just so bad, nobody will ever hear it. Ever.
There you go.
We can just be like, we'll put that in the chest along with all the other lost episodes of Little Podcast of Horrors.
It'll be the bloopers for our Patreons.
Remember that episode we did on Smurfs?
Oh my God. Don't bring that up. Don't bring that up. I had nightmares for a week. Just stop. Okay? Just stop.
Little blue shirtless men.
God, I said stop. No means no, James. Well, this was, damn it. Once again, Kristina just knocks it out of the park. She starts off like thinking like, I don't know where this is going to go. And it just went straight up.
I cut out a lot of stuff too. I'll have to do another episode.
Yes. We should do a part 2 to this later at some point. This was a good episode. Damn. Thank you, Kristina.
Well, I'm glad you liked it. You know, yeah, I wasn't sure if it was going to be a total train wreck. Because
I think that's
I never know what I'm going to do.
I think that's how we all feel every single time. Like, this is going to be good or this is going to be a train wreck. I don't know what, but
Exactly.
you know what? We put ourselves
how I
out
live.
there. We put ourselves out there.
Uh-huh.
That's all.
That's how I live my life. It's going to be good or it's going to be a train wreck.
Well, hey guys, if you thought this episode was awesome like we do, give us a like, give us a share. If you have any questions or you've ever had your own experiences, you know, there's this little fancy thing called email.
Send them.
Send them. And if you haven't listened to like our 50 other episodes, our email address is littlepodcasthorrors@gmail.com. And of course, we have our website, littlepodcastofhorrors.com. We have a Patreon.
It's on the socials.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You can join our Patreon and get on our Discord and tell us directly your story.
Yes, and talk to us about your own psychic and telepathic experiences.
Yes.
Fun, man.
That's all you got to do. Do it. What are you doing with your life?
Yeah.
This is going to be the greatest podcast ever.
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 Get on board early.
Get on.
Yeah. You could say I was there. I was there before they were icons.
Man, you can be like, when somebody like later
I
on
felt full of ourselves.
starts throwing shit at you about how much they know, you can use the line, "Quiet witch. I was there when the magic was written."
Well, love you guys.
Yes. And thank you guys always for tuning in. It means more to us than you know. And yeah, that's all I got to say.
You know what? Hail Ashtar.
Sure.
Hail Ashtar.
Somebody mentioned Rael on a different podcast. Yes, I have to find out what the podcast was, but I was like,
You know
he's an
what?
old friend.
Oh, sexy Rail.
I'll bet he doesn't.
This
I bet
guitar girl wooing.
I'll bet he doesn't pop up behind their logo like he does ours, though.